So, we will start module 3 now. Module 3 we are going to see the installation part. So, how we are going to install Power Center. The installation part will be seen here. So, what you require to install a Power Center server, Informatica Power Center server? Software, you need any one of the databases, any one of the 4 databases you have here: Oracle, IBM DB2, Microsoft SQL Server, or Sybase ASE. So, any one of these are supported for creating a repository, domain repository, and creating any other tables for using them, storing metadata. So, when you have a database already installed, you need to create a user account for that domain configuration. The user should have permissions for creating tables, creating views, and dropping and altering the tables and views, so that you can do insert, update and delete operations under them. Then the Informatica server software you should have. So, that is obvious. So, you should have a Informatica server software with a valid license key. So, the license key can be acquired from Informatica, so that you have a valid time. So, until 2 years from the date of purchase or 1 year from the date of purchase, like that, you have a valid license key. And that license is 2 type of license there: standard license and advanced license. So, standard license is having the basic operations under the services, and the advanced options will have most advanced options like partitioning. All these things come under the advanced option. So, the hardware facility, you should have a minimum of 4 GB is required as RAM, and 4 GB of hard disk space is also required. So, the hard disk space is just minimum 4 GB, you can have any number of amount, so that you will be storing more information, lot of data inside the hard disk space. So, the RAM is minimum requirement is 4 GB, and if you have 8 GB, it will be a very nice one for operating on multiple nodes. So, installation steps: first thing, we need to have a database and a database user account which is having the permissions for altering and creating and deleting tables and indexes, views. Then the next step is to install a Informatica Power Center server. So, where you go to the Informatica software folder where the software is located and run the install.exe file, so that it will open a window where it will be navigating you as a wizard for the installation process. So, the first page, prerequisite page. So, it will be displaying all the requirement for a database or pre-installation task has to be completed. All these things will be displayed over there. Next step is to select the license key. The license key file can be located anywhere inside your system, and you can browse through it and you can select the license key from there. The license key is needed only when you are installing. After the successful completion of installation, the license key can be removed from that location. It won't affect the process which we do after that. The installation directory, by default in Windows, it will take C:. You can install in any other location also. Then after completing the installation, the domain selection window will be displayed. So, we have to click the enable HTTPS for secured domain access, and you can select use a key store file if you want to store the key store file, and whenever you have an access problem, you can restore the key store file again into your domain. So these two options are selected for security purpose. Then the license key file, we are creating it and we are giving next. We will be coming into the domain configuration database window. So the domain configuration database window contains the database type, database user ID and the user password. So database type, out of the 4 data types, you can select any one: Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, IBM DB2 and Sybase. So any one of these can be selected here. And the user ID and password which we have created already inside the database has to be given here. And the connection for database is JDBC URL, database address and the database service name has to be provided. This is for Oracle. For SQL Server, it can differ. For DB2, it can be a different one. So the JDBC parameters, if you select that one, the default JDBC parameter will be appearing over there. So when you are providing the information for the database address and the database service name, so it will provide the information in the JDBC parameters also. So if you want to create a customized connection string, that also can be done using an option. Then we will be testing the connection. By pressing the test connection, the domain will try to connect with the database by given username and password, and if it is connected successfully, it will give a message for successful connection, or if it is not able to connect, then also it will give a message for a failure to connect. So the next step is to provide the username and password for the domain. So the domain name, the node host name, the name of the node and the port number and the domain username and password, everything is displayed over there. So we need to provide a username and we have to give the password and confirm the password. And if you want to display advanced port configuration page, we can go over there. So if you are not needed, we can do the configuration later on. So the domain password username is by default you can give an administrator and you can give your own password, so that this username and password is used by the administrator. This is called as a default administrator and this password is used under administrator, and you can change the password anytime from the admin console. So after successful completion of the installation, so we will be opening the administration console from the start menu and login into them using the username and password what we have given in the while the installation. So when we are into the admin console, so under the domain tab, so we select the domain and navigator and we can create a new repository service. So when you are creating a repository service, a wizard is opened there and we have to provide the necessary information for creating a repository service, like name of the service and location where it has to be, which domain we have to select. If you have only one domain, so the domain is disabled and we are going to create a repository service under that domain only. If you have multiple domains, you have to select it from that. License information, what license we have given while you are installing it, or you can provide a different license also over here. And the node in which this repository service has to be created. A node also has to be assigned while you are creating a repository service. So initially we have only one node, that is what a master gateway, and this is a primary node. So we are selecting that node by default. Next step is to give the database type for the repository. Like how we are giving a database type for domain, repository also has to be created under a database. So this database has to be given here, and this is a different database from that of a domain. So already we have created one database for domain and another one we are going to use it for repository. So this also will have a username and password, the database username and password which we have created under the user account in database, that has to be used here, and the connection string, how to connect with that database, that also will be mentioned over here. And the code page, which is an important one, because the code page across the domain should be same. So, we cannot use different code pages for different services. So, a code page is essential. Here we are using Microsoft Windows Latin 1, and Unicode or ASCII, anything can be used here. A table space name, if you have a different table space to be used for that database, so that has to be mentioned over here. Then whether you have a content already available for that repository, or you ask the system to create a content now, that option is available here. So, you can select either one of them. So, if you already have a content, or if you want to copy content from another repository, or if you want to create a content later, so we select the content exists, or initially by default we select the no content exist, so that a new content is created. Then we have two other options, global repository or version control. Global repository will be created so that we can have multiple repositories, and this repository can be accessed over any other repository. Version control can be enabled so that we can use it for team based development, so that each object will have multiple versions over there. And if you want to enable the Power Center repository service after creating, you can select that option checkbox, so that after creating successfully it will be enabled, or we have to go and enable it manually. So, click the finish button after doing all these options. So, once created the repository service, it will be enabled, and you can view here how the repository service options are displayed. Next step is to change the operating mode to normal from exclusive. So, while you are creating a repository service, it can be created an exclusive mode, where you want to change that to normal mode to do some operations like assigning an integration service to that. So, when you are creating an integration service, before doing that you have to change the exclusive mode to normal mode for the repository service. So, after doing that, under the domain we select the new integration service, so that an integration service will get created. So, the integration service is having another two steps here. The first step involves name, location, license and node. So, the description is optional. If you want a description to be given, if you have multiple integration services in one domain, so we can provide a description here. Location, which domain, under which domain we want to create that integration service, that has to be given. Then the license details. So, if we are using a same license or a different license over here, so that can be assigned here. And the node, which node we are going to assign this integration service for, so that also has to be selected. Then the Power Center repository service to which this integration service is assigned. So, integration service has to be assigned to a repository service. So, it cannot operate separately individually. So, it has to be assigned to a repository service. So, that you have to provide it here in the next step, where which Power Center repository service we are assigning here. If you have multiple service, we have to choose anyone from the list. Username, password for accessing the repository. So, the domain username, password what we have given already, that can be given here. And what type of data movement. So, data movement mode is two type of data movement mode there, ASCII and Unicode. So, we already have used ASCII. If you are using Unicode, we can use that also. So, the appropriate data movement code has to be selected, and finishing them will open another window where we have to use the code page. If you are using ASCII, it will ask for a code page. So, already we have selected MS Windows Latin 1 in repository service. So, we have to select the same thing here for integration service also. So, once it is created successfully, it get enabled here, and we can see that in the navigator. So, when we are selecting the integration service, On the right pane, you will see all the properties, associated repository, process it contains, the permissions, what users and everything have. So, everything can be viewed over here. So, the next step, we are going to install the database and followed with the Power Center server in the system. Thank you.